What's up, y'all? So, sorry for no video in a while. There's a lot of reasons, but long story short, I got a really bad ear infection right around Christmas time, and that turned into a perforated eardrum, which turned into a second infection when the medication for the first infection caused the second infection. It was a whole mess. But hopefully I'm currently on the upside of it. My ear is getting better, and so I'm finally able to put on a fursuit head without being in a ton of pain. I'm happy though that I was feeling better before FC though, and I had an awesome time at that. Oh my gosh, I am so excited for next year. I do have a vlog of that. Unfortunately, we didn't go to FC for the entire weekend, so the vlog for that's going to be a little shorter than normal, but I do have it, and I'm going to be uploading it soon. So look out for that if you like my vlogs, I guess. So since I have covered a lot of topics on the head, I figured I would go over this one. You know, I've already talked about the eyes, the neck, the hair, and this is kind of just, you know, next up in line. That being the nose. Yay, look at it. It's so cute. Nose. There's so many different ways to make noses, so in this video I'm going to talk about the three main-ish ways that I see suit makers doing. I'll go over what they are, I'll go over how to do them, and then at the end I'll go over a few different tips for the materials to make the nose and for, you know, non-standard, you know, canine noses, because for the first three I'm basically going to be talking about, like, you know, your standard canine nose, so keep that in mind. So before I begin, something to know, I think I said it earlier in the video, but I'll say it again. There is no wrong way to make a nose. There are so many ways to make fursuit noses. I've seen just about every technique there is. There's just so many different unique ways. Some people make them anatomically correct. Some people make them just like, you know, flat balls on the face. Some people make them non-anatomically correct considering the species. So if you see these techniques and you're like, oh, I'm not doing one of them, don't fret. I mean, you can make your nose however you want. Out of these three techniques, when I first started making noses, I didn't use any of these. I did it a completely different way. So if you see these and you're like, well, I want to do it a different way, go for it. It's just, the nose is probably one of the most versatile things on the fursuit head in terms of style. So overall, I think first and foremost, your nose should fit your head style and what you like to make before you worry about making it, like, look right. So the first nose on this list is the foam nose. Exactly what it sounds like. It is a nose with a foam core. Exactly like the fursuit head. Now to do this nose, I know a lot of makers will carve the nose directly onto the head base. That means when they're carving the head base and they're carving the muzzle specifically, the nose will just be carved out of the head base along with the muzzle. You can make it out of foam and then glue it on, but I think the easiest technique is to just make room for it when you're carving your head base. Once it's carved into the head base, it's exactly like the rest of the head. You just tape it up with the rest and you put the material over it, and voila, you have your foam nose. I think this is probably the most popular kind of nose right now because I don't want to say it's the easiest, probably the second easiest of the three on this list, but it's probably the most convenient because you're just carving it out of the head. You're not having to make anything separate, and it's really not hard to put material on it. I think one of the reasons this is probably one of the more popular techniques is because some makers can make a pickable nose with it. What I mean by that is a pickable nose is one where you can stick your finger in it and your finger will go through the nose in some capacity. So that is something that can be achieved when doing a foam nose. I've seen it some people do it through the nose. Some people actually dig holes from the nose to the bottom of the upper jaw, like, you know, an actual human nose is. So there's many ways to do it, but I think it also helps with the allure of doing the foam nose. I wouldn't say this nose is the easiest technique to do. It's probably like number 2 out of the 3 on this list, but it's probably one of the more convenient, which is why I think it is one of the more popular options when making a fursuit nose. The second nose on this list, and that is the resin nose. Again, exactly what it sounds like. This is a nose that is made of resin or any other kind of hard substance. Generally speaking, these noses will be bought from suppliers who do it, like DVC and all the ones who supply the resin pieces. Of course, you can make it yourself if you have the materials to cast resin, because I know some people who do, but generally for the first time maker, these will be bought from a supplier. And there's nothing wrong with that. They often also offer, wow, alliteration. They offer a ton of colors, a ton of sizes, a ton of styles too, so that's generally where people get their resin noses from. Now out of all these 3 types of noses, this is the one I have the least amount of experience in, so I'm not going to sit here and preach on how to, go about attaching it. As far as I can tell, it's basically as simple as, gluing it on or getting it on the face with an adhesive. But of course, I'm not going to claim that that's all there is to do it. So if you really want to know how to work around a resin nose, I would highly suggest going online and looking up a tutorial about how to work with resin noses. I'm sure they're not exceedingly hard, but I'm sure there are also more nuances to just slapping it on with some glue. So definitely go look for that if that is something you're interested in. And one thing about resin noses that you might think, which is not true, is that they're only for realistic heads. There are a ton of makers out there who use resin noses on their toonie heads, and they look just fine. The only thing is you have to just make that your toonie head fits with the style of the nose you have. It also fits with the size and everything. So as long as you can make the toonie head and the resin nose look like they, belong on the same face, they can work just fine. So don't worry about using a resin nose on your toonie head. It's perfectly normal. Last nose on my list of 3. I don't want to say that this is the most difficult one because none of these techniques are really difficult, but I would put it at the, bottom for like hardest, just in terms of how many more steps it has in relation to the other 2, and that is the plush nose. For the 3rd time in this video, exactly what it sounds like. It is a nose that is, a plushie. It's a soft nose. It's a nose that's filled with stuffing. And because it is the technique that I personally use and am probably the most experienced in now, I will tell you exactly how to do it. It's really not that hard. It just has a few more steps. So to make this plush nose, all you have to do is make the shape you want out of foam, sculpt it however you want, whatever you want it to look like. Then you're going to cover it with duct tape. You're going to pattern it. You're going to get that duct tape pattern, cut it off, apply it to your fabric, then cut out your pieces, sew all your pieces up, fill it with stuffing, and then you're going to start sewing it onto the head. So as you can see, it's not super hard. If you've made a plushie before in your life, it's exactly like that, except you're just making a nose. And then you are going to sew it onto the fursuit head. So again, not super difficult, but just a few more steps than the other 2. If I had to say, I'd probably discourage a new maker from this technique the most, just because it's a little more involved. Of course, there's nothing stopping you if you want to try this technique right off the bat, but I think as a very first time maker, a foam carved nose or a resin nose might be just a tiny bit easier. This option is probably the best for the technique of the pickable nose, more so than the foam nose, because with the fact that it's completely separate from the fursuit head, you can sew something under it so there's like nothing there, and you can straight up stick your finger in. So that's one of the big plus sides of making the plush nose. It's not the only one, of course, but there you have it. That's how you make a plush nose. I personally favor them, as you can see, and yeah, overall, I think they're really cute. So yeah, those are the 3 types of noses I see the most. Obviously, they are not all that's out there, but they are probably the most common. So if you're ever interested in doing any types of noses like that, there you go. Now I'm going to go over quickly the materials to use on the nose because those are just as important. I personally suggest the main 2 materials to look for a nose is minky fabric or spandexy fabric of any kind. I really wouldn't suggest using fleece unless you are a first-time maker and you kind of just want to practice. Then yeah, fleece is obviously cheaper and it's more available, so go for it. Or if this is your personal suit and you don't care, because I'm very guilty of that. But if this is a suit you want to look really good, or even more so for a customer, I highly suggest avoiding fleece because minky and spandex are much better for noses and they don't pill like fleece, and it'll just look overall much better. I've also seen people use what is it called? It's like a pleathery kind of material. I personally have tried that material and I find it is much harder to manipulate and get the shapes right. To those who can do it, I applaud you. I would not say that it will work for everyone because, again, I've used it, it didn't work for me, so apparently there are people out there who know things I don't, and that's fine. But yeah, those are the 3 materials I would suggest using for the nose. And you can also interchange them, like if you're doing the plush nose, sometimes what I'll do is I'll make the nose out of minky, and I'll make the nostril areas out of spandex to make it, like, you know, smooth inside. So you can mix and match, you can have fun with it, you can try different materials in different spots. It's completely up to you. And lastly in this vid, I'll talk about the fact that, you know, obviously things besides canine noses exist out there. So a few things for that is, if you're making a feline nose, a tip for that I would give is, it's probably not best to try and make that nose pickable. Feline noses, especially ones in big cats, are more integrated into the top of the muzzle than a dog nose is, where it kind of sticks out a bit more, especially like with most suit makers' work. And so it's a little harder to get under there. Not saying it can't be done, but I think you're not sacrificing everything if you just straight up make the cat nose on the face without trying to get under it. It looks perfectly fine and you're not losing anything. So I wouldn't try stressing to make a completely pickable nose with a feline nose. I kind of leave that technique a little more reserved to dogs, but again, do what you want with your truth. The next kind of nose is a deer nose. The one reason I want to bring this nose up is because I find that of all the noses out there, this is one that gets its shape messed up the most. Keep in mind that when you're doing a deer nose, this is not a deer nose. A lot of people will try and draw deer noses or cervine noses kind of more canine, which in some ways, some artwork you can get away with it. But if you really want like a fursuit to look like a deer, you gotta nail the nose. And to do that, always remember that a deer's nose goes from the top of its muzzle all the way down to like the lip line. So whenever you're making a deer nose, always make sure that whether it's foam or it's plush, that it dips all the way down to the upper lip, because that is really going to solidify the fact that this is a deer and it's not a dog with horns. And the last unique nose that I'm going to talk about obviously is nostrils, you know, for like horses and reptiles and all that stuff. Nostrils are pretty easy. They are, you know, just as easy as you think. All you have to do is carve out the nostril form in the foam base. There's not going to be any kind of like, you know, plush technique for nostrils. It's exactly what they sound like. You just have to carve out. I mean, there's some people who will make like, you know, little pop-up nostrils. You can do that. That's more of a really cartoony thing. But for the most part, if you're going for like a anatomically correct, you just have to carve them out, tape them up with the rest of the base, and then put material in there. I personally use Minky every time I do nostrils because nostrils are really small. And spandex is a lot less forgiving than Minky when it comes to like really small pieces. So I would suggest using Minky in the nostrils if that's what you're doing. But yeah, other than that, it's really simple. I would argue that nostrils are way simpler than a full-on nose. So if you have a horse character or a lizard, you're lucky. Alright everyone, that is it for this video. I hope I covered everything. I feel like in the back of my mind I'm forgetting something, but what can you do? As always, let me know what you want to see in the next video. I'm not sure what the next video is going to be at this point. Probably after this I'm going to be uploading my FC vlogs and then I'm going to keep going. I still have that hand paw tutorial on my list, so I hate to keep promising it, but it will be coming eventually. And as you can see, I'm Inspector again. This suit is not my permanent video making suit. I actually do have a permanent video making suit in the works, but I'm curious, if you are watching right now, what would you like the species of my permanent video making suit to be? Very curious. I have a few picked out, but I haven't solidified anything. So if you like regularly watch my vids and you'd like to see a specific animal be the suit that talks to you, let me know. Maybe it'll influence my decision. Alright guys, I will see you next time. Bye!